Star Trek VI shouldn't work. There's a lot of movie in this movie. It's a political thriller, it's a Sherlock Holmes mystery, it's got a prison break caper, it's got a space battle. But let me tell you how they succeeded at all of these things, and gave the original Enterprise crew the send-off that they richly deserved.
Had trouble sleeping last night. My hiatal hernia is acting up. The ship is drafty and damp. I complain, but nobody listens.
As far back as 1982's Star Trek The Wrath of Khan, they were playing around with this theme of the crew getting old. And nearly a decade later, they weren't getting any younger. But the franchise was clocking in hit after hit after hit. The next movie would see William Shatner, Captain Kirk himself, in the director's chair. What could possibly go wrong?
What does God need with a starship?
Star Trek V: The Final Frontier was a big commercial and critical disappointment. It all but killed Star Trek on the big screen. And for a while, it seemed like that might be it for the original Enterprise crew. But the 25th anniversary presented a second chance. One more movie to wrap things up for the original gang and send them out on a high note. To do this, they assembled a dream team. Directing would be Nicholas Meyer. This was the man who'd already saved the franchise once before, when he made Wrath of Khan, the second and arguably the best movie in the series. Leonard Nimoy had proved his creative chops after helming numbers 3 and 4. He'd have a hand in coming up with the story. And series lead William Shatner would be kept strictly to acting this time. The final installment would also bring back the most iconic villains of the franchise.
Klingons off the starboard bow.
Again with the Klingons.
Now, the Klingons and the Federation had always been an allegory for the Soviet Union and the United States. An enlightened, peaceful democracy facing off against a brutal, totalitarian empire. But in the real world, things were changing. Under the glasnost policy of Soviet leader Mikhail Gorbachev, the Cold War was thawing. Peaceful coexistence seemed within reach. And Star Trek VI: The Undiscovered Country would tackle the politics of the era head-on. Cold warriors tied to the past would be pitted against optimists willing to take a chance on a better future. The movie opens up with an explosion at the Russian nuclear plant in Chernobyl. The Klingon dilithium mine on the moon of Praxis. The Klingon Empire is in big trouble, so there's a split in Starfleet on what to do. Reach out the hand of friendship or leave them to their fate. And our heroes end up on opposite sides of the debate. Spock signs the Enterprise up for a peace mission, but doesn't realize that Kirk might have other ideas.
Don't believe them. Don't trust them. Let them die.
Now, back in the original series, the episodic nature of the show didn't lend itself to character development. Kirk was pretty much unchanged from beginning to end. Every story was self-contained. But the movies were different. 2, 3, and 4 are in direct continuity, each starting immediately where the previous one left off. And it's here on the big screen that Kirk actually gets a character arc. In number 2, he meets his estranged son David, and it ends with the prospect of a new beginning for their relationship. Number 3 sees this dashed, as David is executed by the Klingons. Now, the final movie in the series takes these strands and brings them all together. Kirk started out fighting Klingons out of duty. Then it became personal. And now he's torn, as his duty is demanding that he puts his personal feelings aside. Kirk reluctantly takes on the mission, and the Enterprise is dispatched to pick up the Klingon delegation. This leads to an excruciating formal dinner with Chancellor Gorkon and his aides. Most of the Klingons are really obnoxious. They are very easy to dislike, and this is intentional.
We do believe all planets have a sovereign claim to inalienable human rights.
Human rights? Why, the very name is racist.
We're in the boots of the skeptics. We're wondering why the Federation is bothering to make nice with these jerks. And eventually, Kirk snaps back at them, and lowers himself to their level.
We need breathing room.
Earth, Hitler, 1938.
And what really ties all this together is the performance by David Warner as Gorkon. In what little screen time he has, you really buy the idea that he might be genuine.
If there is to be a brave new world, our generation is going to have the hardest time living in it.
And after the dust settles, we, along with Kirk, end up regretting how badly things went at the dinner. It's at this point where, amazingly, the line blurs between fiction and real life. As they were filming this movie, there was an attempted coup in the Soviet Union against Gorbachev. Factions in the establishment tried to oust him from power because they were opposed to his attempts to reform the economy and reach out to the West. And this eerily echoed the plot of Star Trek VI, where conspirators seek to derail the peace talks. It all kicks off when the Enterprise appears to fire on the Klingon ship. 2 people in Starfleet spacesuits beam on board and assassinate Gorkon. Quite justifiably, the Klingon ship moves to counterattack. And this is the big decision point for Kirk. Every fiber of his being wants to fight. He's been fighting Klingons his whole life, but he overcomes his baser instincts and humbles himself, putting the mission and his duty first.
We surrender!
It's the beginning of Kirk's big change of heart, and I love this idea of a hero showing strength, not by blowing up the bad guys, but by making sacrifices and enduring hardship. Kirk and Bones beam over to the Klingon ship to help. And as Gorkon lies dying, rather than speak his last words to his daughter or his chief of staff, he reaches out and pleads with Kirk.
Don't let it end this way.
At this point, the story splits. Kirk and McCoy are arrested, and it's this huge injustice. They tried to save Gorkon, and now they're being punished for their efforts. They're put through this awful kangaroo court. The grandfather of TNG's Mr. Worf has a little cameo as their defense counsel, but the outcome is predetermined. Our heroes are shipped off to a gulag in Siberia. The icy Klingon prison planet of Rurapenthe. The story is going to force Kirk to suffer in order to earn his redemption, and this is a fun interlude. They take all the classic prison tropes and give them some sci-fi twists. Kirk gets in a fight with the biggest dog in the yard. The guards are needlessly cruel. And it's a great excuse to showcase some cool aliens, which, is sort of necessary in a Star Trek movie. And the big budget allows them to go beyond the usual forehead ridges. Meanwhile, back on the Enterprise, the rest of the crew have to figure out what happened and how to clear their names. It's at this point that Spock magically transforms into Sherlock Holmes.
If you eliminate the impossible, whatever remains, however improbable, must be the truth.
Director Nicholas Meyer has a deep history with literature's greatest detective. He wrote a couple of Holmes stories himself, one of which, The 7% Solution, got turned into a movie. He was clearly keen to do another one, only this time hundreds of years in the future. The Enterprise now becomes the ultimate lock room mystery. The culprit can't escape. Safety systems make destroying evidence impossible. Spock is just the right character to use Holmesian logic in the sci-fi setting. We untangle the web of intrigue, following the evidence step by step, until finally the conspirators are revealed. Now, Valeris being the mastermind is really well done, because they do some masterful misdirection. We're not inclined to suspect her, because she's set up as Spock's protege, and there's a scene where he hints at her kind of being his successor. She's a Vulcan, so we expect her to be virtuous and above reproach, but the masterstroke is this early scene. We see these 2 crewmen who are grumbling about the visiting Klingon delegation.
They all look alike. What about that smell?
They're confronted by Valeris, who appears to chastise them for this.
You men have work.
Yes, ma'am.
Then snap to it.
Seemingly confirming to us that she's one of the good guys and is all on board with Spock's peace initiative. But once all the facts are revealed, the scene looks very different. In reality, these 3 are all in cahoots. And what's actually happening is she's giving them the order to put the assassination plot in motion.
You men have work.
Yes, ma'am.
Then snap to it.
With the conspiracy uncovered, the Enterprise picks up Kirk and McCoy. Valeris reveals that an unholy alliance of rogue Klingon and Starfleet officers want to derail the peace initiative. These guys are so tied to the old ways that they'll paradoxically work with their enemies in order to extend the conflict. Kirk could very easily have ended up in their camp, but he's a changed man now. Gorkon risked everything for peace, and now Kirk will ensure his sacrifice was not in vain. Now, I haven't talked about the movie's villain yet.
In space, all warriors are cold warriors.
General Chang is very much in the tradition of Khan, Kirk's iconic foe from number 2. It's the 3rd time the movies have done this kind of villain. It'd eventually lead to diminishing returns, but this is a strong iteration of a trope that hadn't quite worn out its welcome yet. Christopher Plummer is a top-class actor, and he has a great time chewing the scenery.
Do you deny being demoted for these charges? Don't wait for the translation! Answer me now!
And while Khan was after revenge, Chang is a little different. As with many great villains, he's a dark reflection of the hero. Like Kirk at the start of the movie, Chang is tied to the old ways. Both were unable to trust the enemy, afraid that embracing a future beyond the conflict would lead to disaster or make them irrelevant. When they first meet, they're the same. But while Kirk is able to change, Chang remains forever tied to the past. As we enter the film's final movement, the stakes couldn't be higher. The peace conference is going ahead on Kittimer, but the conspirators plan another assassination, this time the Federation president. Between the Enterprise and Kittimer is a seemingly unbeatable foe. General Chang has a bird of prey capable of firing while cloaked. This was the ship responsible for setting up our heroes, firing while invisible in a bid to frame the Enterprise. Now they're in a one-sided battle. There's a real sense of jeopardy. The Enterprise is getting pummeled, but it can't fire back. We cut back and forth constantly between the battle and the assassin getting ready to take his shot, which is a brilliant ticking clock that ramps up the suspense. Backup arrives in the form of Captain Sulu's ship, the Excelsior. He draws some of the Klingons' fire, but just like the Enterprise, he can't fire back. Now, I have two small quibbles about this otherwise brilliant sequence. One, I think Chang gets to be a bit much at this point.
Cry havoc, and let's slip the dogs of war.
He spends most of the battle shouting Shakespeare quotes over the intercom.
I'd give real money if he'd shut up.
It verges on parody, and I think they only barely get away with it because, it's Christopher Plummer. My other nitpick is the resolution. Uhura recalls they have science equipment on board that's used to chart gaseous anomalies. Spock figures out that this could be hooked into a torpedo and allow it to home in on the enemy ship. This is all fine and dandy, but it kinda comes out of nowhere. The existence of this equipment should have probably been mentioned beforehand. In fact, weirdly, at the start of the movie, Sulu mentions having this kind of gear on his ship.
I've concluded my first assignment cataloging gaseous planetary anomalies in Beta Quadrant.
It feels like something got lost in the shuffle here. And this could have been much more strongly and explicitly tied into the themes of the movie. A peaceful ship of science having the key to beating a ship of war. Anyway, they launch the torpedo and it finds its target. And despite what I said about Chang's over-the-top taunting just now, it does help build to a great fist-pumping moment when the tables are finally turned.
Fire!
To be or not to be.
With Chang dispatched, the gang arrive at the peace talks just in time to stop the assassination and arrest the conspirators. Kirk makes an inspiring speech, and he finally comes to terms with the death of his son.
People can be very frightened of change.
And lets go of his hatred. It's a beautiful conclusion to an arc that began all the way back in Star Trek II. And beyond this sense of closure, the movie is full of wonderful little moments like this that wrap things up for the old crew. Or at least for the big three.
I'm trying to thank you, you pointed-eared hobgoblin.
Spock and McCoy were known for their trademark bickering, which is a great setup for this scene where Spock asks for help rewiring the torpedo.
Would you care to assist me in performing surgery on a torpedo?
We fully expect McCoy to throw out one of his trademark grumpy one-liners. I'm a doctor, not an engineer. But instead, we get this.
Fascinating.
Two colleagues who got on each other's nerves, who grew to respect each other, who briefly shared a brain, who are now friends. It ties a neat little bow on their relationship. In the same way, Kirk and Spock get this conversation about their impending retirement.
You and I have grown so old, we have outlived our usefulness.
But the whole thing is like a meta-commentary on the end of this era of Star Trek. It works as part of the story, but it's really about the actors saying goodbye to the characters and acknowledging their legacy. And over the course of the movie, everyone gets neat little character moments. There isn't time for big character arcs involving Chekhov, Scotty, or Uhura, but you never feel like they're being left out or forgotten.
So, this is goodbye.
And the final scene is a beautiful send-off to the crew. One final cruise on the original Starship Enterprise, before passing the torch to the next generation. But what do you think? Did they get this right? Was anything missing from the grand farewell? Let me know in the comments. That's all for this one. I'll be seeing you.